Welcome to I, the podcast that delves into the conflicting dualities within us, and where we celebrate the art of being more than one thing. I'm your host, Terry Katz, and as someone who walks between the two worlds of filmmaking and music, I know firsthand the beauty and tension that exists living between two creative realms. In this podcast, we'll explore the dualities of guests who, like all of us, embody more than one side, navigating lives that don't always fit neatly into a single label. So let's dive in to explore the dualities within ourselves that shape our identities and make us who we are. Today's guest has a passion for music and art.
I didn't really want to be directed by the sensations or the emotions associated with the song. It's just a mental, visual journey into the unknown.
Please welcome David Niswonger.
Hey, what's going on, Terry?
Hi, David. You want to give us a little background of yourself and your sense of duality?
I always liked art. College, I thought I might be a writer. I spent a lot of time doing short story work. Played in bands in high school. That's what really captured my heart. But I couldn't really figure out how to make a living doing that in a way that I enjoyed. I just didn't like playing the bar scene and the same song every night, over and over again. So I decided I needed to find another career. I went to film school because I thought that might be a path where I could find this creative, satisfying activity. But it was too tedious for me and a challenge to make a living. I ended up getting hired by a cable television company to run their video department. In the meantime, to make money, I sold cable television door to door.
While you're doing this, were you writing music? Were you
Oh, yeah.
creating music? Were you doing
Well,
art at the time?
I think my goal was at that point to be a songwriter, to forget about performing live, but just try to write songs. And that was enough creativity for me, and I did that all the time. I would, where I could grab a couple hours here and there, I would play the piano and try to sketch out some melodies or write some lyrics, etc. The job got kind of overwhelming. My business job with the cable company, I ended up being the general manager, and it was a lot of hours per week, and I had less and less time to do my songwriting. But the time came when it was time for me to stop doing that. And fortunately, I could financially. And so I sort of dedicated myself to songwriting, like full time. Yeah, I'm looking for love. It's a great metaphor for anything. Love. If you're trying to talk about an issue in the world, you can just turn that issue into a woman. Just the typical brokenhearted stuff that you get brokenhearted in life from a lot of different things. It's not always romance. And there's some satisfaction from articulating pain and exploring it. And I try to, even if I talk about some downbeat kind of stuff, I always try to make sure there's an optimistic kind of twist to it. In the meantime, I'd become a very old father. So I was kind of like a Mr. Mom. And I'd take care of my kids and try to write songs when I had time. And I got intrigued with abstract art, which I always liked, like a lot of my generation, the Impressionist movement in France. I started studying some local abstract artists, and I thought, hey, I think I can do that. And so I started painting. That was about 15 years ago. We're talking a little bit about the duality of your mind's focus, right? One stream is going in a creative direction, and sometimes you got to take a job. That's a whole different part of your brain that's being activated. And actually, I've discovered it was very difficult to change gears. It would take it would take an hour or so. I might spend some time it was an insurance business, calling customers or calling clients or potential business. And then I would say, okay, now I'm going to write some songs. Now I'm going to go paint. It would take an hour and a half for my brain to kind of like change gears. Eventually, the inspiration would come and you could change gears. I found that with art, it wasn't as difficult for me to make the gear changing. Art for me isn't really emotional. It's certainly different than calculating a business model for somebody's business or balancing the budget or something, because it is creative. For me, it's not emotional. It was that emotional element that was hard for me to transition from a business perspective mindset where you don't want any emotion in there to songwriting where you want a lot of emotion in there. But painting for me was a much easier transition because it didn't have anything to do with emotion. It had to do with abstract concepts.
How do you account for the emotion someone feels looking at one of your paintings?
Well, I think that's a different thing. I just immersed myself in colors and forms. And it's not particularly emotional, it's satisfying. This color is really beautiful. You like the way this positions in relationship to the other images that are on the screen. But when it's over, the painting process, that's when you look at it and you go, it's magical. When I paint, the mood that I'm in is more like a meditation where you're kind of like not in beta so much. You're more in alpha. You're just like cruising in this abstract world of color. Because I don't do representational art. That would require a lot of tedious skill. What I do is just fun. And it's just colors and lines. And it's like a meditation. And it's a different wavelength of activity in your brain. And when you finish meditating, whether you do it that way or with art, when it's over, you feel great. You may feel really stimulated. Sometimes I'm exhausted when I finish painting. I didn't run a mile or anything. I was just sitting there with a brush, or palette knife, but I'm just worn out. But it's a wonderful, just like running a mile, that exhaustion feels good. And the same is true with painting for me.
You definitely can relate to that creative exhaustion.
Yeah.
It's such a good feeling. When you first became interested in music and art, was there someone that inspired you in any of the two art forms?
Well, I'd say both, but I wasn't a happy child. I was an unhappy child. I was an angry young man. I was a rebel without a cause. I survived my teenage years by listening to music that I could relate to. They made me feel like there was somebody else that might understand what I was going through, at least emotionally. But the Beatles, the Kinks, blues guys, Bonnie Raitt, Joni Mitchell, Jackson Browne, that music meant so much to me that I thought it would be so wonderful if I could write something that would touch someone the way these songs touched me. Because for me, they were healing. What a noble goal it would be to accomplish.
Let's look at some of your art and listen to some of your music.
Sounds great.
There is a wind that's blowing through the trees tonight. There is a big white moon shining oh so bright. I don't know nothing about the wind, but hold on to your hand if it begins.
My artwork and my songwriting is more stream of consciousness. When I'm writing a song, I always start with music. I'm playing chords primarily. I'm not that skilled of a musician, but I know music pretty well. And as I play music, feelings come to me, and I try to articulate them. I don't use fancy words, or I'm not a clever lyricsmith by any means.
Oh, I forgot the song.
But I'm just trying to be honest with how this music is making me feel. And I do the same thing with the painting. Now, whether or not it's a good idea to put abstract art on top of these songs, I don't know.
The video we looked at, Hold On to Your Heart, how did that come together?
Well, I found some chord progressions that I liked, and emotionally, I was thinking about a relationship I had once upon a time. I grew up in this time of free love and promiscuity, experimentations in sex. And if you were in love with someone and they were experimenting with their sexuality, it was pretty hurtful. And so I was thinking about this relationship I had, and the song is all really about, I don't really want you to do that. I want you to hold on to your heart. Save it for me.
What drove you to put that art with that music?
You know, a lot of those decisions were made by my video editor.
So you did not pick out the artwork? He looked at your art portfolio and went through it and decided?
Yeah. Now, there was a couple of times where I asked him to use a certain piece. There's a couple of songs that I did a video, and my daughters are very talented artists too. And I wanted him to use some of their work. But I didn't. I just sort of let the universe take care of that.
While you're painting, do you hear a song in your head? Do you?
No, I usually don't hear songs. Well, I don't. You know, a lot of people that paint play music when they're painting, and I tried that. I didn't really want to be directed by the sensations or the emotions associated with a song. It's just a mental, visual journey into the unknown.
Hold on to your heart. Hold on to your heart. Hold on to your heart. Baby, if you can.
How have your experiences shaped your sense of duality?
I think when you juxtaposition things together, it creates a whole different dynamic, a bigger dynamic. And so the duality of visual art versus musical art, I just think I'm intrigued by what happens, even if it's just by accident, when you put those two things together.
Have there been any valuable lessons that you've learned that maybe you could share with our audience?
I think the duality was an escape or more of a therapy to cope with the negatives of my reality.
So what's next for Dave Niswonger?
I want to get back into more songwriting. I sort of tilted to almost all painting here the last few years. And I purchased an acoustic piano, and I'm going to get another keyboard to inspire me with playing music a little bit more. I'm going to continue my painting. One of the virtues of having a hobby or a passion for something that you can do sitting down is that in my case, I have spinal stenosis. It's very difficult for me to walk. I can play the piano. I can paint. I can read. One of the things I think that art teaches you is how beautiful this life can be.
What's one key takeaway for a viewer from today's podcast?
I would just say, stick with what you love. Do it. Don't really get too focused on what the returns are. Was it Kurt Vonnegut who said, you don't do art to make a great living, you do art to have a great life?
Very good, Dave. So last question, how can listeners connect with you?
Go to Instagram or go to YouTube.
Well, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you, Terry.
Thank you for spending time with us today. If you enjoyed our time together, please subscribe to my podcast, and please visit David Niswonger at